The desert did not breathe its seed. The wind dragged dry bones across the sand, carving their story into the earth like an ancient, forgotten prayer. Cactus needles stood like silent sentinels, not a bird in sight, just a vast, unforgiving emptiness that spread to the ends of sight and sanity. A figure moved through the silence. She walked with no purpose, only direction. Her boots had split down the seams, blisters wept against cracked leather. Her lips were sunburned and split like broken clay. Hair that had once been chestnut and pinned neatly now clung in snarls against her cheeks, streaked with dust and sweat. Mara calmly did not carry water. She hadn't planned to come back. The sun had already taken parts of her skin, her tears, her sense of time. A week ago, she'd been a rancher's wife, a mother. Now, she was little more than a shadow, searching for a place to disappear. Behind her lay the world that failed her. In front, just the dry nothing. She hadn't cried when the stagecoach burned. She hadn't screamed when they dragged the bodies out, when her husband's neck twisted at that sick angle, when the boy's shoes lay abandoned in the sand, one still, warm. She didn't fall to her knees. She didn't wail. She simply stood still, and something inside her died quietly. She sold the ranch to a stranger named Holt, who didn't ask questions. She gave her milk cow to the widow in town who couldn't afford bread, left her wedding band in the church poor box, and then she started walking into the desert. It was a rebellion against God, against logic, against survival itself. She walked in silence. Even the vultures didn't bother to follow. A silver locket swung against her chest. The only thing she kept, inside two curls of hair, one golden, one nearly black, pressed between paper, the initials J and C etched on the inner rim, barely legible now. She clutched it between blistered fingers, thumb rubbing the cold metal like a worry stone. Her son's laughter echoed faintly in her ears. The sound wasn't real, but it didn't need to be. Just a little more. Mama, I beat you to the creek. Pa said you can't run faster than me. She had braided their hair that morning. She remembered how the sun glinted on Jack's face when he squinted, how Charlie always snuck her wildflowers even in winter. Mara felt the tears coming, not from sadness, from heat, from dehydration, from madness. She sang to herself, barely audible, her voice torn from her throat like dried leaves from a dead tree. Down in the valley so low, a gust of wind stole the rest. The sand shifted around her, rising. She didn't notice until the first stinging needle pierced her cheek. The air turned gritty, sharp. She tried to shield her eyes, but it was too late. The dust storm was moving in like a phantom army. The wind howled, clawing at her face. Her shawl whipped backward. Mara dropped to her knees, coughing, dry and painful. Her fingers dug into sand that seemed to boil. She screamed, but no one was listening. Lightning flashed somewhere far off, heat lightning with no promise of rain. Then she heard it, a sound too alive for this dead place, a cry, not a scream of the wind, not a coyote's snarl, not the creak of old wood from some forgotten wagon skeleton, a cry, a baby's cry. At first she thought her mind had finally splintered. She forced herself up, legs trembling. The storm howled behind her, blinding and brutal. She stumbled forward, toward the sound or where she imagined it came from. Mama, she whispered, not even knowing if she meant herself or some phantom. There beneath the lopsided Joshua tree, whose trunk curved like a broken finger, something moved. Mara collapsed to her knees beside it. A bundle of rags, sodden with sweat, dirt, and blood trembled in the crook of the tree's shadow. She reached forward with fingers like twigs, pulled the rags aside. Tiny, pale limbs curled in on themselves. A baby, red-faced, squalling. The umbilical cord was crusted. Flies already buzzed nearby, skin slick with sand and filth. Mara recoiled. Then she gasped, because the child looked new, not more than 2 days old. Blue eyes blinked up at her through sticky lashes. The child wailed harder, voice raw but alive. Mara didn't move. The wind faded just enough for silence to press in. What kind of God does this? She whispered, her voice crumbling. She stared up at the sky. Her mouth trembled, dry and cracked. You take my sons and leave this one out here. Is this penance? Is this some kind of joke? The baby coughed, too tiny to protest, but strong enough to beg for attention. Mara reached down. Her hands shook. The rags were rough, some kind of old flour sack, half-stitched together. She peeled away what she could, lifting the tiny thing to her chest. The baby's body was fever warm. Its cries subsided the moment it touched her skin. It didn't feel like justice. It didn't feel like healing. It felt like weight. Real, undeniable, living weight. Mara collapsed backward onto the sand, the baby on her chest. She blinked up at the white sun, the Joshua tree bowing overhead like a sentinel, her fingers curled around the baby's back, its breathing steadied. She was too weak to stand, but even weaker to leave it behind. She closed her eyes, let the wind pass over, and for the first time since she lost everything, she held on. The sun had risen higher, now no longer golden, but merciless. It beat down like judgment. Mara stood on wobbling legs, cradling the child against her chest. She looked back at the Joshua tree. She could leave it, the baby, the crying, helpless thing that had no right to be here. She could lay it down in the shade, turn around, and let the desert swallow them both. She even started to. She stepped away, once, twice, but then the baby mewled, not the hard, demanding cry of a child denied, just a soft, pitiful whimper, like it already knew the world wouldn't care. Her knees locked. She turned back, every muscle screamed in protest. As she knelt once more and scooped the baby up, her fingers shook as she tore a strip from her already ruined dress, binding the child tighter to her chest. The cloth stuck to her skin, damp with fever sweat. She stood. Death would have to wait. She staggered forward, south, maybe, toward what? She didn't know. The sun burned like coals overhead. Time unraveled. Her lips peeled. Her eyes bled salt. Her feet, already raw, began to split open. With every step, she left behind traces of herself. The baby grew heavier, or she grew weaker. She spotted a cluster of prickly pear cacti not far off. With trembling hands, she ripped at the pads, ignoring the spines. Her palms tore. She chewed. The pulp, spat it into her hand, then pressed it gently to the baby's lips. The infant suckled instinctively, too small to know how close it had come to death. A distant shadow circled above. Buzzards. Mara raised her bloodied fist and shook it. Not yet, she rasped. Not this one. Another hour passed. Or maybe three. The sand shimmered like water, taunting her. A sharp hiss. She froze. At the edge of a dune. A coiled rattler flicked its tongue. Inches from where she'd laid the baby to rest her arms, its body moved like smoke over the sand, sliding toward the child. Mara didn't think. She picked up a flat rock and hurled it with all her might. The strike landed just behind the snake's head. It thrashed violently, tail buzzing like a warning bell from hell. She grabbed another stone, then another, until the sound stopped. Blood soaked into the dirt. The air trembled. Still. She collapsed beside the baby, cradling it again, shaking. Breath jagged and desperate. No footprints, no sounds of wagons, no discarded belongings. The baby had no trail behind it, no history. Pale skin, blue eyes to light for the desert. Mara brushed dust from its brow and stared into its face. Where'd you come from, little ghost? The child blinked slowly, almost in reply. That night, the wind dropped and the silence pressed down like a blanket. She curled herself around the baby at the base of a stony outcrop. Her arms tightened around it every time the coyotes howled. In the morning, she saw what used to be a river. The dry bed ran in either direction, choked with broken reeds and old tracks. She followed it, hoping it might remember water, even if the land didn't. Her legs gave out halfway down the embankment. The world tilted. Her vision went white at the edges. Her body landed hard, the baby still tucked against her chest. Then shadows. Just for a moment, she blinked. A shape stood at the edge of her vision, too tall to be natural, motionless, not a vulture, not a man from town. The figure didn't speak. It only watched. Dark hair bound behind a headband, long spear in hand, painted chest, silent as the rocks around him. She opened her mouth. No words came, just breath. Her fingers curled around the locket beneath the baby's wrappings. Her lips trembled. Help, she mouthed, but her voice was gone. The figure didn't move. Then darkness took her. She came to inside a linda made of dried brush and hides. The air smelled of sage and ash. Her hands were wrapped in cloth. Her arms tingled with the familiar ache of torn muscles. The baby lay on a pile of soft hides beside her, breathing steady. A bead of water hung from its lip, as if someone had just fed it. Mara's throat burned. She tried to sit up. Sharp pain lanced through her back. Someone had cleaned her wounds. Someone had saved them. She looked around. No boots, no rifle, no sound of metal or English. Just the whisper of the wind through brush and the crackle of cooling coals in a fire pit. She crawled to the Lino's entrance and peeked out. Empty. But nearby, fresh tracks in the sand, bare feet, wide-spaced, heavy. Someone had walked off just before she woke. Not someone. The man from the river bank. He hadn't left her to die, and he hadn't taken the child. She didn't know what that meant. Not yet. But she knew she wasn't alone anymore. Her body still trembled, her lips still split. But something else stirred, something unfamiliar since the day the stagecoach burned. She didn't know if it was hope or fear. She lay back on the hides, the baby against her chest. She whispered into its tiny ear, "You hear that?" Nothing answered. She smiled faintly. Someone's out there, little ghost. Someone's watching. She didn't know why he'd helped, but he had, and something told her he'd be back. She closed her eyes, arms wrapped around the child, one ear tuned to the silence, the other to the wind. Tomorrow, she would walk again, but not alone. The canyon was little more than a split in the earth, its walls sun-bleached and jagged, like the ribs of something long dead. Mara staggered into its shade with the baby strapped tight to her chest, eyes half blind from the glare. The heat had scorched everything, but her instinct to move forward. The silence was different here, not dead watchful. She paused, her fingers twitching toward a stone she could throw. But it wouldn't help. She knew she was being watched. Then she saw him, atop a ledge, framed against the deep blue of the sky. He stood tall and still, his skin painted with earth tones, spear in one hand, the same man from the river bed. He didn't move until she did, just a step forward, a blink. Then he spoke, voice as rough and ancient as the wind. "Why carry death in your arms, Mara's?" Breath caught. She swallowed hard, shielding the baby's head with one hand. Her voice rasped up from dry lungs. "She's life, not death." The man's gaze didn't soften, but he tilted his head, just slightly, as though reassessing. Without another word, he descended the rock path like a ghost descending from the sky. When he stood before her, he was even taller than she'd thought, broad-shouldered, eyes like obsidian chips. He smelled of sage smoke and dust. Mara stood her ground, refusing to flinch. "I am Tazi," he said. He waited. Mara blinked. "Mara." Tazi offered her a strip of dried meat and a small clay bowl filled with warm water. Her fingers trembled as she accepted it. She fed the baby first, then sipped, never taking her eyes off him. He pointed behind him. "Spring." She hesitated. He turned and walked away. She followed. The spring was tucked inside a ring of stones, half covered by brambles to hide it from passing eyes. Cool water bubbled quietly beneath green moss. Mara knelt beside it and wept silent tears that slid into the earth without sound. That night, they camped in silence near the spring. Tazi built a fire, but kept it low. The baby lay nestled between them, wrapped tight. Mara stared at the flames, her jaw tight. He stared, too. It should have been a fragile piece, but there was a strange solidity to it, like the pieces of broken pottery leaning together. Neither whole, but together, able to stand. Tazi didn't ask questions. He offered no promises. He handed her food and nodded when she nodded. Mara didn't speak either, not about her sons, or her husband, or the blood that still crusted the back of her dress, but the silence between them wasn't cold. That night, the baby gurgled in her sleep. Mara smiled without meaning to. Tazi watched. His face didn't move, but something in his eyes changed, a glint not of suspicion, but memory. They didn't sleep much. The dessert didn't allow for that. The next evening, as the sun melted behind the canyon rim, Mara smelled something on the wind. Smoke. Not campfire smoke, something darker, grazier, carried from miles away. Tazi stiffened. He knelt and pressed his palm to the ground. When he rose, he signed something with his fingers. Danger. She didn't argue. He pointed toward a split in the canyon wall, a narrow cleft. He motioned for her to go, fast. Mara slipped inside, clutching the baby clothes. He vanished like a shadow swallowed by dusk. The cleft was cold and tight. Mara pressed herself against the wall, listening. Her heartbeat thudded like war drums. Then dashed voices. Men English, but rough. Drunk. Thought I saw her. Trail out here. Ain't no woman could last this long in the dust. A gunshot cracked in the distance. Then another. A scream echoed against stone. Then silence. Long, bone-deep silence. Mara waited, holding her breath until the baby whimpered. She pressed her lips to the child's forehead, murmuring nonsense, just to keep her own heart from bursting. Then footsteps, not heavy, Tazi emerged from the shadows, his knife stained dark. He carried a sack over his shoulder, inside canned food, blankets, a half-full canteen. He said nothing. Mara said nothing back. She didn't need to ask who the men were, but she knew. Deep down, she knew the look of them, the same kind that shot her husband through the spine and took her boys away with grinning teeth. That night, they didn't sleep. Mara crouched near the spring and gently sponged dirt from the baby's tiny feet. The child cooed, as if unaware of the death that had brushed so close. Tazi sat nearby, sharpening his knife. The moonlight made silver lines across his skin. Without a word, he moved closer and extended his hand not to her, but to the locket around her neck. Mara stiffened. He touched it, gently. Your sons? She didn't answer, just nodded. Tears fell, uninvited. Tazi didn't offer comfort, but after a long moment, he looked away, jaw tight. My daughter, he said quietly. They called her Singing Deer. Mara turned to him. He didn't meet her gaze. She died during the last winter. Fever. My wife followed her into the snow not long after. He paused, then said, No names left in my lodge now. They sat in silence again, the ghosts wrapped in firelight. A baby between them, still too new to understand that it had wandered into a land haunted by loss. The wind picked up, and Tazi added another branch to the fire. Mara whispered, I was raised to think men like you would kill me in my sleep. Tazi glanced at her. I was raised to think women like you would burn my village. She laughed, soft and hollow. Maybe we were both right. He didn't laugh, but he didn't walk away either. The fire crackled between them. The baby stirred, then went. The desert stretched quiet and gold as Mara and Tazi crested the last ridge. In the distance stood the ruins of the old mission, a crumbling shape on the horizon, silhouetted against the blood-orange sky. Its adobe walls sagged, windows hollow. The wooden doors weathered gray and brittle, but the bell still hung. Rust covered its mouth, but the chain swayed slightly in the breeze, whispering secrets in a tongue no one remembered. They reached the courtyard by dusk. Weeds had claimed the stone walkways, and the pews inside had long since rotted, but the well remained. Tazi dropped a bucket, drew water, and offered it to Mara first. She drank, then pressed the ladle to the baby's lips. They made camp beneath the mission's dying mesquite tree. Mara watched the sky change. She felt something settle in her chest, not peace, but possibility. She wanted to bury something here. Not Tazi, not the child, herself, the version that walked into the desert to die. The woman who lost everything. She wanted to let her go, to make room for something new. Then the shot rang out. It snapped through the air like lightning through a dry tree. Tazi spun, shielding Mara instinctively. The second shot came before they could move. It struck Tazi low in the ribs. He collapsed against the stone well, his blood already dark against the dust. Mara froze, then scrambled for the rifle, leaning against the saddlebag. Voices erupted from the shadows. 5, maybe 6 bandits, slinking from behind walls and over. Rubble like desert rats. One of them stepped forward. Grinning. She recognized him, the gold tooth. The way his hand hovered at his belt like a rattlesnake's head. He was there, on the stagecoach. The one who yanked Charlie by the arm. The one who dragged Jack by the hair. Look what the sun dragged in, he said, gun raised. A ghost and her red-skinned pet. Mara's hands shook. The baby screamed. Tazi gasped, still conscious. He locked eyes with her and gave the faintest shake of his head. But she didn't run. She didn't kneel. She aimed. The rifle kicked back against her shoulder. Like thunder, the gold-toothed man staggered. Red bloomed from his chest. Then chaos. Gunfire. Echoes. Cracked wood. Shattered stone. Mara ducked behind the well, reloading by instinct. Heart pounding so loud she couldn't hear her own breath. Dust exploded around her as bullets struck the walls. She rolled and fired again. 1, 2 more down, a 4th fled. The 5th hesitated, then followed, and suddenly silence. Her ears rang. The baby sobbed. Mara dropped the rifle and crawled to Tazi. His hand clutched the earth, slick with blood. He coughed, lips painted red. No, she whispered, voice hoarse with disbelief. No, no, stay with me. He looked at her, eyes unfocused but full of something ancient and calm. The child lives. He murmured. That's not enough, she said, choking. He smiled faintly, and with the last of his strength, pulled a bracelet from his wrist, a loop of beads and feathers. He reached toward the baby. Name her. Something that sings. Then his eyes went still, and the wind blew through the broken arches of the mission as if to carry his spirit west. Mara didn't cry right away. She sat in silence beside him until the sun began to rise. Then she stood, with hands raw and trembling. She dug beneath the mesquite tree. The earth was stubborn, dry, reluctant to let go of what it held, but she dug anyway. Each scoop of dirt a tribute. She wrapped Tazi in his own cloak, pressed the bracelet to the baby's wrist, then laid him down beneath the shade and covered him, stone by stone. There were no words, no cross, just earth, sky, and the wind. The baby cooed quietly, watching her with wide, unknowable eyes. Mara held the child close and whispered, "Hope." The word didn't solve anything, but it felt like light. By noon, she'd saddled the horse, packed what little they had left. She tied Tazi's bracelet to her saddle horn, where it would sway in the wind and sing, just like he asked. The bell above them didn't ring as they left, but Mara imagined it did. As they rode, the desert no longer looked like death. It looked like beginning. The sky opened wide in front of them, and behind, the mission stood part ruin, part grave, part altar. She didn't know where the trail would lead, but she would ride it, for the baby, for Tazi, for herself, because the dead don't bury themselves, and the living, no matter how broken, still choose whether to turn back or move forward. Voiceover begins as the screen fades to golden desert and slow rising sun. Voiceover. Gentle and reflective, some walk into the desert to die and find a reason to live. If you were moved by this story, subscribe for more tales of resilience and forgotten frontiers. What would you have done in Mara's place? Let us know in the comments below. Final shot, Mara riding west. The baby swaddled tight against her, Tazi's bracelet swinging in rhythm. The screen fades to black.